They built empires that touched the lives of millions, titans of finance, tech, and industry whose names once symbolized untouchable success. But beneath the boardrooms and private jets, a shadow of greed and deception grew, until the law caught up, stripping away fortunes and freedoms alike. These are 10 harrowing true stories of billionaires who plummeted from the pinnacle of power into the cold grip of prison cells. Reminders that no vault is impenetrable when trust is the real currency. Case 1. Bernie Madoff, the Phantom Empire. In the glittering halls of New York finance, where fortunes are forged in whispers and deals sealed with handshakes, one man promised the impossible. Returns that defied the market's chaos, year after year, without fail. But when the final statements arrived, empty promises on crisp letterhead, the illusion shattered, revealing not just a scam, but a betrayal that stole $65 billion from the dreams of thousands. How did the Wizard of Wall Street become its greatest thief? Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born in 1938 in the working-class borough of Queens, New York, to a family scraping by on modest means. His father, Ralph, struggled with a plumbing supply business that often teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, while his mother, Sylvia, worked as a secretary to make ends meet. Young Bernie, sharp-eyed and ambitious from the start, absorbed the lessons of survival early. He mowed lawns, installed sprinklers, and saved every penny, turning a summer job into the seed money for his future. By 17, he had $5,000 tucked away, enough to enroll at Hofstra University, where he studied political science, though his real education came from the pulse of the markets. After a brief stint in the Coast Guard, Madoff dove headfirst into the trading floor frenzy of Wall Street in the early 1960s. With no formal finance degree, he bootstrapped his way in, founding Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC in 1960 from the cramped living room of his modest apartment. He traded penny stocks, those volatile specks of opportunity for the overlooked, using a homemade muscle machine he'd rigged up to monitor prices. It was gritty, unglamorous work, but Madoff's edge was his reliability, a trait that would define him. He married Ruth Alpern, daughter of an accountant, and together they built a life of quiet determination, raising 2 sons, Mark and Andrew, in a world where success was measured in persistence, not flash. By the 1970s, Madoff had ascended. His firm pioneered electronic trading, creating the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations, NASDAQ's backbone, making him a pioneer who democratized access to the markets. Investors flocked to him, drawn by his steady hand amid the oil shocks and recessions. He served as chairman of the NASDAQ in the 1990s, rubbing shoulders with regulators and moguls alike, his salt and pepper hair and measured baritone projecting the gravitas of a man who knew the game's rules inside out. Philanthropy burnished his image further. Donations to Jewish causes, universities, and charities painted him as a steward of wealth, not just its accumulator. By the early 2000s, his personal fortune hovered around $1 billion, his advisory business managing $17 billion in assets, though no one knew the half of it. To the world, Bernie Madoff was the sage investor, the one who turned volatility into velvet returns of 10 to 12% annually, rain or shine. Friends and family invested. Celebrities whispered his name. Even Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate, entrusted him with Holocaust survivor funds. Madoff's persona was impeccable. Understated suits, a Park Avenue penthouse, a yacht named after his wife. He was the billionaire next door, the man who made the impossible seem routine. But beneath that facade, cracks had formed decades earlier. It started small in the 1970s, when Madoff's legitimate trading operation hit a rough patch. Clients clamored for the steady gains he'd promised, but the markets didn't cooperate. Rather than admit shortfall, Madoff dipped into a forbidden well, a Ponzi scheme, named after Charles Ponzi's 1920 swindle, where new investors' money paid returns to the old ones, creating the illusion of profit without actual investment. At first, it was a temporary bridge, a way to buy time. He funneled client deposits into his broker-dealer arm, trading just enough to cover withdrawals, fabricating statements with his brother Peter's accounting software. The scheme grew insidiously, fed by Madoff's reputation. He courted feeder funds, European banks, and high-net-worth individuals with exclusivity. No marketing, just word-of-mouth invitations to his inner circle. By the 1990s, as his firm swelled to 200 employees, the fraud ballooned to $20 billion in fictitious assets. Madoff lived large, private jets to Palm Beach, a $7 million apartment in France, but always with caution, wiring bonuses through offshore accounts to keep the machine humming. The turning point came in 2005 when a regulatory squeeze on hedge funds threatened exposure. Madoff, ever the innovator, layered on complexity, split-strike conversions, options hedges that sounded brilliant but existed only on paper. His sons, now executives in the firm, suspected nothing, or so they claimed. The moral boundary didn't crack in a single moment. It eroded gradually, justified by the lie that he was protecting his legacy, his family, his clients from the market's cruelty. Yet, as withdrawals spiked in 2008 amid the financial crisis, the phantom empire began to starve. The unraveling started not with fanfare, but with a quiet plea. In late 2008, as Lehman Brothers crumbled and credit froze worldwide, clients besieged Madoff for redemptions, over $7 billion in days. His brother Peter, the compliant operations chief, watched the numbers bleed red. On December 10th, whispers reached the Securities and Exchange Commission. Harry Markopolos, a Boston fraud investigator, had been sounding alarms for 9 years, calling Madoff's returns too good to be true, mathematically impossible without manipulation. But the SEC, understaffed and deferential to Wall Street insiders, dismissed him repeatedly. Now, with the crisis amplifying every tremor, federal prosecutors in New York caught wind through anonymous tips. The FBI moved in shadows, subpoenaing records from feeder funds like Fairfield Greenwich, which had parked $7.3 billion with Madoff. What they found was a house of cards. No trade confirmations, no positions in major custodians like J.P. Morgan, just a single, suspicious account at Chase Bank holding $483 million, peanuts against the $50 billion in reported assets. Investigators escalated, raiding Madoff's Manhattan headquarters on the morning of December 11, 2008. Agents and windbreakers sifted through servers and ledgers, uncovering the core horror. For 17 years, Madoff hadn't invested a dime of client money in stocks or bonds. It was all smoke, fake trades logged in a secret 17th floor office, accessible only by Madoff and a handful of loyalists. Wire transfers traced the flow, fresh deposits from the likes of actress Zsa Gabor's estate, and a Spanish bank funneled straight to payouts for earlier victims. The pursuit turned frantic as suicides mounted. Elderly investors leaping from high rises, families ruined overnight. Madoff's niece, Shauna, a compliance officer, cooperated early, handing over emails that exposed Peter's complicity. Across the Atlantic, European authorities froze assets linked to Madoff's scheme, from London hedge funds to Geneva vaults. The clues piled up like indictments. Impossible consistency in returns, fabricated audit trails, even Madoff's own vacation emails boasting of great performance. By Christmas, the web had ensnared 150 funds and thousands of individuals, from retirees in Florida condos to charities in Israel. The tension peaked when Madoff confessed to his sons that night in December, sobbing that it was one big lie. They turned him in at dawn, but the damage was etched in stone. The trial unfolded in March 2009, a spectacle in Manhattan's federal courthouse that laid bare the rod of unchecked trust. Madoff, gaunt and orange jumpsuit, waived his right to a jury, pleading guilty to 11 felony counts: securities fraud, money laundering, perjury. Prosecutors, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Paul Pelletier, unveiled the grotesque scale: $65 billion in paper losses, the largest fraud in history, dwarfing even Enron. Revelation stunned. Madoff had targeted Jewish communities, exploiting cultural bonds of fealty. He bribed accountants with bonuses tied to inflows. His firm had filed false reports to the SEC as recently as 2006. Ruth, his wife of 50 years, watched in horror as their life savings, $70 million, were clawed back, though she claimed ignorance. Peter's testimony cracked under cross-examination, admitting to backdating trades but blaming brotherly loyalty. The courtroom shocks came in waves. Victim impact statement from a 77-year-old Long Island widow who'd lost her nest egg, or the $19 million pilfered from Madoff's own foundation for victims of terrorism. Judge Denny Chin, stern and unflinching, sentenced Madoff to 150 years, effectively life at age 71, on June 29, 2009. The fraud was stunning, Chin intoned, staggering in scope and breathtaking in its audacity. Madoff, unrepentant in delivery but hollow-eyed, offered a rote apology. "I have left a legacy of shame." Restitution orders topped $170 billion, with Irving Picard, the appointed trustee, chasing assets from Montauk Beach houses to French chateaus. The consequences rippled. 13 co-conspirators faced charges, including niece Shauna's husband. Feeder fund execs like Fairfield's Walter Noel pleaded guilty to misleading investors. In the aftermath, Madoff's empire dissolved into a cautionary void. He died in 2021 at Butner Federal Prison, his body ravaged by kidney failure, isolated from the family he'd poisoned. Son marked by suicide in 2010, Andrew in 2014 from cancer, both swearing paternal betrayal. Ruth, stripped of luxury, lived modestly on a pension, haunted by the ghost of complicity. Victims, through the Madoff Victim Fund, clawed back $4 billion, a fraction of the void, but the real toll was intangible. Shattered retirements, orphaned charities, a generation's faith in markets eroded. Madoff's fall exposed the fragility of gatekeepers, the SEC's blind spots, the allure of steady gains in an unsteady world. It whispered a deeper truth. In the pursuit of security, we often invest not just money, but our illusions of control, only to find the greatest risk lies in the hands we trust most. He built a kingdom on borrowed dreams, until the throne room emptied, leaving only echoes of the betrayed. Case 2. Alan Stanford, The Caribbean Mirage. Picture a pristine beach in Antigua, where turquoise waves lap at white sands, and a Texas drawl promises fortunes as reliable as the sunrise. Alan Stanford handed out certificates of deposit like tropical cocktails. High yields, zero risk, backed by his family's bank. But when the hangovers hit in 2009, investors awoke to $7 billion in evaporated wealth, scattered across offshore ledgers that no amount of sun could illuminate. How did a self-made financier turn an island idol into the SEC's most elusive Ponzi hunt? Robert Alan Stanford entered the world in 1950, in the oil-rich heart of Fort Worth, Texas, the second son of a strict blue-collar family. His father, James, a military veteran turned insurance salesman, instilled a fierce work ethic, while his mother, Mary, managed the home with quiet resolve. Young Alan, restless and charismatic, chafed at the ordinary. He attended a local college briefly, studying business, but dropped out to chase bigger horizons. In his early 20s, he ventured to Mexico with a cousin, scraping together $40,000 to buy a house in Laredo, flipping it for profit amid the border boom. It was a gambler's instinct honed by Texas grit. Risk big, win bigger. By 1979, at age 29, Stanford founded Stanford Financial Group in Waco, Texas, a modest brokerage peddling mutual funds to ranchers and retirees. He was the picture of Southern charm, tall, broad-shouldered, with a booming laugh and a penchant for seersucker suits. Marriage to his first wife, Susan, produced a daughter, but divorce soon followed, mirroring his pattern of bold starts and abrupt ends. The 1980s marked Stanford's ascent. He expanded aggressively, acquiring a small bank in Montserrat during the island's volcanic unrest for a song, $1 million, and rebranding it as Stanford International Bank Limited in Antigua, a tax haven where regulations were as lax as the trade winds. Back in Texas, he built a gleaming headquarters, courting high rollers with private jets and lavish parties. Stanford's persona evolved into that of a global statesman. Knighted by Antigua's government, he sponsored cricket tournaments, dubbing himself Sir Alan, in jest, though the honor stuck. Philanthropy amplified his halo. Millions to Caribbean schools, AIDS clinics, even a $100 million pledge to fight poverty. By the 2000s, his empire spanned 13 countries, employing 2,500, with personal wealth pegged at $2.2 billion. Forbes listed him among the 400 richest Americans. Investors from Hollywood stars to European nobles poured in $8.5 billion for his signature product, Stanford International Bank Certificates of Deposit, or CDs, promising 7 to 10 returns in a low-interest world. No ads, just referrals through a network of 300 investment managers in 30 offices. Stanford lived the dream, villas in St. Croix, a 164-foot yacht named Dr. Ed, after his cardiologist father. He remarried a former employee, Louise, and fathered 3 more children, projecting the image of a family man who had cracked the code to effortless wealth. To the world, he was the Texan titan who made offshore banking sexy, a bridge between Wall Street's edge and the Caribbean's calm. The moral fracture began in the mid-1990s, as Stanford's ambitions outpaced his ethics. Legitimate banking in Antigua yielded slim margins, squeezed by U.S. regulations and global scrutiny. To sustain growth, Stanford veered into deception, transforming his bank into a Ponzi engine. New deposits funded payouts to earlier clients and his opulent lifestyle, while auditors were kept at bay with bribes and bogus reports. The pivot crystallized in 1998 when Stanford dismissed his U.S. compliance chief for raising red flags about unaudited reserves. He doubled down, instructing staff to fabricate investment strategies, vague claims of diversified global portfolios that never materialized. Offshore secrecy shielded the scam. No public filings, client funds siloed in opaque trusts. By 2003, as inflows hit $1 billion annually, Stanford's excess escalated. A $3 million birthday bash for his finance chief, featuring imported palm trees and a fireworks show that lit up Antigua's sky. The crime festered quietly, justified as creative accounting to outmaneuver competitors. But as the 2008 financial crisis loomed, redemption requests surged, exposing the mirage. Stanford, ever the showman, hosted investor galas on his yacht, toasting to unwavering stability, even as internal memos warned of a $500 million shortfall. The boundary had long cracked. Now, it splintered under the weight of reality. Suspicion simmered for years, but the pursuit ignited in 2003 when Texas regulator Ralph Lamb flagged Stanford CDs as unregistered securities. The SEC, overwhelmed, issued a Wells notice, a precursor to charges, but shelved it amid internal debates. Whispers grew louder. A 2004 Barron's expose dubbed Stanford the $8 billion mystery, questioning his return's impossibility. Undeterred, Stanford sued for defamation, burnishing his victim narrative. The Real chase began in 2008 as markets tanked. The SEC's Fort Worth office, tipped by a disgruntled broker, subpoenaed records from Stanford's Houston HQ. Agents uncovered the first threads. No independent audits since 2004. Billions in assets that traced to a single, illiquid account in Antigua. FBI raids followed on February 16, 2009, seizing servers and freezing $20 million in U.S. assets. Across the Atlantic, Antigua's Financial Services Regulatory Commission, ironically, Stanford funded, resisted, but U.S. pressure mounted. Investigators pored over emails revealing kickbacks to brokers, one of inflows as finder's fees. A key break came from James Mouton, Stanford's Antiguan deputy, who flipped, testifying to falsified balance sheets propping up $7 billion in CDs. The web extended to Switzerland and Venezuela, where wire transfers masked outflows to Stanford's personal accounts. $100 million for polo ponies, $2.5 million for his girlfriend's jewelry. As suicides echoed Madoff's tragedy, a Florida investor's widow left penniless, the tension coiled tighter. By summer, 28,000 clients worldwide clamored for clarity, their statements frozen mid-lie. The trial, commencing in March 2012 in Houston's federal court, was a slow-burn demolition of Stanford's empire. Indicted on 14 counts, including securities fraud and obstruction, the 61-year-old defendant, wheelchair-bound from a prison beating, pleaded not guilty, blaming subordinates. Prosecutors wielding 50,000 documents painted a portrait of deliberate deceit, Stanford as the puppet master, directing from his Antigua throne room via satellite phone. Revelations cascaded. 1.5 billion siphoned to buy Antigua's citizenship for allies, a $65 million loan to himself disguised as a diversification. The courtroom shocks arrived in victim testimonies. A retired couple from Tulsa wiped out after 15 years of safe investing. A Spanish bank exec who lost $200 million, sparking a diplomatic rift. Stanford's defense crumbled as Mouton detailed the global diversification fraud. No stocks, just interbank loans to shell entities Stanford controlled. On March 7, 2012, after 5 weeks, the jury convicted on all counts in under 2 days. Sentencing in June drew 200 victims to the gallery. Judge David Hittner, eyes steely, handed down 110 years, calling it fraud on a colossal scale. Stanford, defiant to the end, claimed innocence. I am not a thief. Forfeiture stripped $300 million in assets, with trustee Ralph Janvey pursuing yachts and villas. Co-defendants like his CFO, James Davis, got 20 years for perjury. In the wake, Stanford's mirage faded into infamy. He died in 2022 at age 72 in a Texas medical prison, his appeals exhausted, body weakened by illness. Antigua, his adopted fiefdom, reeled, its economy gutted, cricket fields renamed in shame. Victims recovered $500 million through liquidation, a sliver against the abyss, but the scars lingered. Families evicted, dreams deferred, faith in offshore havens poisoned. Stanford's saga illuminated the perils of exotic allure, how charisma cloaks calculation, and how far regulators must chase shadows cast by the sun. It serves as a stark reflection. In the quest for yield beyond borders, the true risk often hides not in the waves, but in the man who sells the shore. He peddled paradise as profit, until the tide pulled back, exposing the barren sand beneath. If cases like this fascinate you, subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, where every mystery has a ticking timeline waiting to be uncovered. Case 3. Raj Rajaratnam, the Whisper Network. In the shadowed trading floors of Manhattan, where fortunes shift on the whisper of a tip, one hedge fund titan listened closer than anyone, eavesdropping on CEOs and insiders like a ghost in the machine. His bets netted billions, but when the wires went silent in 2009, a single recorded conversation unraveled a $60 million insider trading ring that proved even the sharpest ear could be deafened by the law's echo. What turned a Sri Lankan immigrant's American dream into a federal nightmare? Raj Rajaratnam was born in 1957 in Colombo, Sri Lanka, into a family of Tamil intellectuals. His father a prosperous entrepreneur, his mother a homemaker in a bustling colonial home. As ethnic tensions simmered in the 1970s, young Raj, bright and unassuming, fled to the U.S. at 18, landing at Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania on a scholarship. He studied economics, immersing himself in the alien rhythm of American markets, trading stocks in dorm room simulations. Graduation in 1981 thrust him into Wharton for an MBA, where his analytical mind sharpened like a blade. By 1983, he joined the Neuhaus trading desk at Chase Manhattan Bank, rising swiftly through mergers and acquisitions advisory at Needham Company. Rajaratnam was the archetype of quiet ambition, slight build, wire-rimmed glasses, a soft-spoken accent that masked a voracious intellect. He married Ashley Allison, a fellow finance whiz, and they settled in Greenwich, Connecticut, raising 2 daughters amid manicured lawns and private schools. The 1990s catapulted him to legend. In 1997, at age 40, Rajaratnam founded Galleon Group with $20 million of his own savings and seed capital from friends, mostly South Asian professionals drawn to his vision of a meritocratic fund. From a modest midtown office, he built a Tiger Cubs rival, named after Julian Robertson's acolytes, amassing $7 billion in assets by 2009 through aggressive long-short equity strategies. His edge? A network forged in immigrant resilience, alumni from Wharton, Intel engineers, Goldman Sachs alums. Forbes pegged his net worth at $1.4 billion. He hosted Diwali galas for 500, donated millions to Sri Lankan tsunami relief, and mentored young traders, earning the moniker The Whisperer for his uncanny market calls. Galleon wasn't flashy, no yachts or tabloid exploits, but a machine of precision with 80 analysts churning data in open-plan bullpens. Rajaratnam embodied the model minority myth, the self-made billionaire who outsmarted Ivy Leaguers, proving brains trumped birthright. To Wall Street, he was the enlightened insider, trading on insights, not illegality, his firm a beacon for diverse talent in a clubby world. The fracture emerged subtly in the mid-2000s as Galleon's returns plateaued amid post-dot-com volatility. Rajaratnam, ever the networker, blurred lines between collegial chats and criminal edges. It began innocently enough, dinners with Anil Gupta, an Intel executive, swapping non-public intel on chip sales. But by 2006, the whispers hardened into a syndicate. Rajaratnam doled out $1.75 million in bribes disguised as consulting fees to sources like Rajiv Goel at Intel and Rumi Khan, a McKinsey consultant turned Galleon mole. The crime crystallized in a 2008 call with Khan, where she leaked applied materials earnings minutes before release. Rajaratnam shorted $7 million, pocketing $900,000 in hours. Offshore accounts in the Caymans laundered the gains, while Galleon's traders executed without question, bound by NDAs and bonuses. Moral erosion came via rationalization. Everyone does it, he'd quip, citing Wall Street's wink and nod culture. As the 2008 crisis raged, desperation amplified the scheme. Tips on Goldman Sachs bailout, AMD's mergers, netting $63.8 million in illicit profits. The boundary didn't shatter in drama. It frayed in the hum of conference calls, where information's value outstripped its ethics. The probe ignited in 2007 when Rajat Gupta, McKinsey's ex-CEO and Galleon board member, tipped off Rajaratnam about Buffett's $5 billion Goldman investment pre-announcement. Unbeknownst, the FBI's squad of wiretap specialists, led by Assistant Director David Chavez, had Khan in their sights for unrelated fraud. A search warrant yielded her BlackBerry, brimming with 50 recorded Galleon calls. The escalation was surgical. From October 2008 to May 2009, prosecutors tapped Rajaratnam's lines, capturing 21 incriminating conversations amid 10,000 hours of mundane trades. Clues cascaded. Phrases like, "I've got something cooking," synced to suspicious bets on Hilton Hotel's buyout. The net widened. Subpoenas to Intel and McKinsey unearthed email trails of Gupta's boardroom leaks. By June 2009, as Galleon hemorrhaged $1 billion in redemptions, the SEC froze assets, alerting Rajaratnam via a tipster. Panic set in. He shredded notes, but digital ghosts lingered. The pursuit spanned continents. Agents in Silicon Valley grilling sources, IRS audits tracing Cayman wires. Tension peaked with Gupta's arrest in October 2011, his silent betrayal. No words exchanged, just timed trades, exposing the syndicate's heart. Over 20 co-conspirators flipped from Khan's guilty plea to Goel's immunity deal, painting Rajaratnam as the quarterback in a $60 million huddle. The trial opened in October 2011 in New York federal court, a high-stakes chess match under Judge Richard Holwell. Indicted on 14 counts of securities fraud and conspiracy, the 54-year-old Rajaratnam, dapper in pinstripes, denied everything, claiming mosaic theory, piecing public hints into bets. Prosecutors, wielding Preet Bharara's Southern District firepower, played the tapes like a greatest hits album, Khan's bad news on the earnings met with Rajaratnam's beautiful revelation stunned. Gupta's tip alone yielded 17 million. Bribes funneled through fake invoices to a Galleon expert network. Courtroom jolts came via wiretaps intimacy. Rajaratnam coaching sources on hypotheticals, his laughter masking nerves. Defense experts decried the government's fruit of the poisonous tree, but the jury, after 12 weeks and 66 witnesses, convicted on all counts in May 2012, deliberating just days. Sentencing in November drew 100 victims, from pension funds to small traders. Holwell imposed 11 years, 10 million fine, 53.8 million forfeiture, calling it a betrayal of trust that eroded market integrity. Co-conspirators scattered. Khan 2 years, Goel probation. Gupta, in a parallel trial, 2 years for his ghost role. Galleon liquidated, its 7 billion carcass picked over by clawbacks. The fallout reshaped shadows. Rajaratnam, released in 2021 after good behavior, retreated to a 20 million Tampa mansion, barred from finance. His fortune halved to 700 million. Galleon's diaspora scattered. Analysts to Citadel, mentors disillusioned. Victims recouped 92 million via settlements, but the psychic toll lingered. A chill on expert networks, stricter insider rules, and a 30 spike in SEC probes post-scandal. Rajaratnam's arc mirrors the immigrants' double bind. Hunger for ascent clashing with the system's unwritten codes, revealing how whispers, once wings, become weights when amplified by justice's unblinking ear. He traded on secrets others guarded, until the recordings turned his own voice into the damning evidence. Case 4. Bernard Ebers, the telecom towers collapse. He started with a dingy motel in rural Mississippi, stringing together payphones for truckers, and built a telecom empire that spanned continents, connecting voices across the globe. But when the dial tone went dead in 2002, 11 billion in cooked earnings exposed a fraud so vast it blacked out the lights on Wall Street's biggest scandal. How did a Southern everyman, hailed as a visionary, dial up his own downfall? James Bernard Bernie Ebers was born in 1941 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, the youngest of 5 in a modest farming family that embodied prairie resilience. His father, a gas station owner, moved the clan to California, then Texas, chasing opportunity amid the dust. Young Bernie, lanky and soft-spoken with a drawl that disarmed, excelled at basketball, earning a scholarship to Mississippi College, where he majored in physical education. Teaching stints followed in small-town high schools, but the entrepreneurial itch pulled him away. In 1969, at 28, Ebers bought a $450,000 stake in a Hattiesburg motel, renaming it the Rest Haven and learning the ropes of hospitality the hard way. Washing sheets, balancing books. He married Jackie, his college sweetheart, and they raised 3 daughters in a world of Southern simplicity. Church suppers, pickup trucks, and community barbecues. Ebers was the relatable boss, khakis and loafers, no corner office ego, projecting the aura of a coach who led by example. The 1980s ignited his telecom spark. Long-distance rates were sky-high, and Ebers spotted a niche, reselling minutes through leased lines. In 1983, he and partners founded LDDS, Long-Distance Discount Services, from that same motel basement, targeting businesses tired of a tease monopoly. Growth was explosive. By 1985, revenues hit 9 million. Acquisitions of rural telcos followed, fueled by junk bonds. Ebers, now CEO, steered the 1995 merger into WorldCom, a $40 billion behemoth that became America's number 2 long-distance provider. He expanded voraciously, buying MCI for $37 billion in 1998, laying 100,000 miles of fiber optic cable that could circle the earth 4 times. His persona shone. A teetotaling Baptist who read the Bible daily, coached youth sports, donated $1 million to Mississippi College. Forbes ranked him among the world's richest at $1.4 billion. He drove a pickup to board meetings, lived on a 1,600-acre ranch, and spoke in folksy parables about making a difference. WorldCom employed 60,000, its stock a darling of the dot-com boom, climbing from 1 to 64 a share. To investors and employees, Ebers was the anti-corporate hero, the motel man who wired the world, proving grit trumped glamour. The ethical slide commenced in the late 1990s as telecom deregulation flooded the market with competitors, slashing margins. WorldCom's debt ballooned to $41 billion from acquisitions. Stock loans collateralized Ebers' personal fortune, pressuring him to prop up the share price. The break came in 1999, when quarterly earnings missed analyst whispers by a hair. Rather than disclose, Ebers greenlit accounting sleight of hand, capitalizing line costs, expenses for leasing network access, as assets, deferring them like future revenues. It was a $3.8 billion fiction at first, orchestrated by CFO Scott Sullivan, who buried entries in obscure ledgers. By 2000, as the bubble burst, the fraud escalated to $11 billion, reclassifying operating costs as prepaid investments. Ebers, detached in his ranch office, signed off via memos, rationalizing it as temporary to weather the storm, protecting jobs, pensions, his legacy. Lavish perks masked the rot. $400 million in personal loans forgiven by the board, a $1.5 million home on company dime. The crime wasn't violent. It was a quiet rewrite of reality, where fiber optics carried not just calls, but concealed desperation. As 2001 dawned with MCI integration woes, the tower teetered, but Ebers touted synergies in earnings calls, his drawl steady as the lines he claimed to own. Doubts flickered in 2001, when WorldCom's rivals like Global Crossing imploded under similar debt. The SEC's enforcement arm, tipped by McCluka's whistleblower, launched a routine audit in May. But internal alarms rang louder. Controller David Myers, haunted by the ledgers, confessed to Cynthia Cooper, WorldCom's VP of Internal Audit. On June 20th, 2002, Cooper's team unearthed the $3.8 billion bomb. Line costs inflated across 5 quarters. The revelation cascaded. Forensic accountants traced $500 million in bogus construction entries, no invoices attached. FBI agents swarmed Clinton, Mississippi headquarters, seizing servers amid stunned executives. The pursuit accelerated as Sullivan fled to Florida, only to return and flip, detailing Ebers' approvals in emails like handle it. Overseas, European regulators froze WorldCom's UK assets. Bondholders sued, uncovering $800 million in off-book swaps. Tension mounted with each disclosure. $1.2 billion more in fraud unearthed, sparking a 90-stock plunge, wiping $180 billion in market value. By July, as employees wept over 17,000 layoffs, the web tightened. Ebers' ranch raided for documents, his pickup impounded. The clues were banal yet damning. Excel spreadsheets renamed to hide adjustments, board minutes omitting risks, proving the collapse wasn't market fate, but engineered deceit. The trial ignited in November 2004 in New York federal court, a stark arena where Ebers' folksy charm clashed with prosecutorial steel. Indicted on 9 counts of securities fraud, conspiracy, and false filings, the 63-year-old, bespectacled and frail, pleaded not guilty, blaming accounting complexities beyond his ken. U.S. Attorney David Anders laid bare the blueprint. 30 witnesses, including Sullivan's tearful testimony of Ebers' directive, "We gotta hit our numbers," and Cooper's heroic expose. Revelations chilled. $400 million in personal gains from stock sales amid the lies. A growth team pressured to fabricate revenues. Courtroom thunder came from victim voices, a Detroit union's $100 million loss, pensioners facing ruin, and Ebers' own recorded frustration. What the hell happened? After a miss. Defense painted him as a delegator duped by quants, but the jury, after 8 weeks, convicted on all counts in just 9 days. Sentencing in July 2005 drew 100 spectators. Judge Barbara Jones, voice measured, imposed 25 years, calling the fraud among the most egregious in history. "You have betrayed the trust," she said. Forfeiture hit $100 million. WorldCom reemerged as MCI, later swallowed by Verizon, but the scars, $107 billion in debts restructured, lingered. Sullivan got 5 years for cooperation. Ebers Tower crumbled into legacy's ruins. He died in 2022 at 81 from ALS in a Texas hospice, his sentence halved by Health Mercy, unrepentant to the end. WorldCom's ghost haunts accounting. Sarbanes-Oxley reforms born from its ashes, mandating audits and whistleblower shields. Victims clawed back $6 billion via settlements, yet the human cost, suicides among traders, families shattered, defied dollars. Ebers' tale probes the vertigo of unchecked expansion, how a coach's field vision narrows in the boardroom's fog, turning connections into conundrums, and reminding us that the strongest lines can fray when truth is the first cut. He wired the world with ambition, until the signals crossed, short-circuiting his empire into oblivion. Case 5. Michael Milken, the junk bond junkie. From the canyons of Beverly Hills, where Hollywood dreams met Wall Street ambition, one mathematician turned financier revolutionized takeovers with junk bonds, high-yield gambles that toppled giants and minted millionaires. But in 1989, as the confetti of deals settled, a mountain of hidden bribes and manipulations buried his $1 billion empire under 98 felony counts, proving that the bonds that built him would be the chains that bound him. What alchemy turned a boy genius into the most reviled raider of his era? Michael Robert Milken entered the world in 1946 in Encino, California, the son of a shoe store owner and a homemaker in a sun-baked suburb of Los Angeles. His father, Bernard, scraped by in retail, instilling in young Michael a fascination with numbers, baseball stats, compound interest, over sandlot games. A prodigy, Milken skipped grades, devouring math texts at Berkeley High, where he graduated valedictorian. At the University of California, Berkeley, he majored in economics, then Wharton for an MBA, emerging in 1970 with a thesis on the untapped power of high-yield debt. Slight and bespectacled, with a mop of dark curls and a perpetual squint from poring over spreadsheets, Milken was the awkward intellect, more comfortable with equations than small talk. He married Lori Hack, his college sweetheart, and they settled in a modest Westwood home, raising 3 children amid PDA meetings and temple services. Milken's early career at Philadelphia's Drexel Burnham Lambert was unremarkable. A bond salesman crunching data in a windowless office, but his mind raced ahead, spotting patterns in the fallen angels, bond from once blue-chip firms now trading at pennies, yielding 15 or more. The 1970s forged his legend. Relocating to Beverly Hills in 1978, Milken transformed Drexel's outpost into a junk bond powerhouse, raising $2.6 billion for his first client, TWA, in a hostile bid. Junk was his rebrand for non-investment grade debt. Risky, but cheap capital for underdogs challenging incumbents. By the 1980s, his 30th floor trading desk buzzed like a war room. 150 phones ringing, assistants in Bermuda, shorts fetching cokes. Milken at the center, rasping trades in a voice hoarse from dawn calls. He pioneered the highly confident letter, Drexel's informal guarantee of funding, fueling $200 billion in deals. Milken's net worth soared to $1.1 billion. Forbes crowned him the decade's richest. Philanthropy softened his edges. $600 million to cancer research via the Milken Family Foundation, sparked by his brother's death. He hosted annual Predators balls in Aspen, raiders like Carl Icahn mingling with junketeers, projecting a messianic vibe, democratizing finance, empowering entrepreneurs. To Wall Street and Hollywood alike, Milken was the brain trust, the whiz kid who junked the old guard, his orthodox Judaism and family devotion adding a layer of improbable wholesomeness. Drexel ballooned to 10,000 employees. Milken, in rumpled suits and yarmulke, seemed invincible, whispering bond prices like spells. The corrosion set in around 1984 as Milken's volume, 100 million daily, outstripped regulations. To corner the market, he orchestrated parking schemes, temporarily hiding bonds for favored clients to manipulate prices, netting illegal spreads. The pivotal fracture came with the 1986 Ivan Boesky scandal. Milken's ally, the arbitrageur, caught bribing for tips. Milken had funneled $100 million through Boesky's accounts, disguising kickbacks as consulting fees for insider access on deals like Revlon's takeover. By 1987, as Black Monday loomed, the fraud deepened. Fictitious trades to boost Drexel's books, $600 million in unreported gratuities to brokers like Fred Joseph. Milken justified it as ecosystem grease. Everyone wins, but it was a web of deceit, from Cayman shells laundering gains to coerced settlements silencing rivals. His personal haul, $550 million in illicit fees. The boundary eroded not in a blaze, but in the fluorescent hum of all-nighters, where Yield's siren song drowned out the SEC's distant warnings. As 1988 closed with Drexel's $1.6 billion loss, the junk king clung to his throne, blind to the hounds baying at the gates. The hunt began in earnest in 1985 when the SEC's Rudy Weddle flagged Milken's market dominance as monopolistic. But Boesky's 1986 plea, trading immunity for names, unleashed the storm. Informants like Martin Siegel detailed $30 million in bribes tied to Milken, from Gulf Plus Western Stock Parks to MCA tips. The FBI's squad, under U.S. Attorney Rudolph Giuliani, wiretapped lines and raided Beverly Hills on March 29, 1989, seizing 20,000 boxes of records. Clues unfurled like a ledger's unraveling. Coded memos, Mick for Milken, sinking trades to non-public merger talks. $200 million traced to Boesky's Beach House slush fund. The pursuit spanned coasts, subpoenas to Sunbelt savings, exposing $47 million in phony arbitrage. International probes into Swiss accounts. Tension crested with Drexel's November 1988 bankruptcy filing, a $3.9 billion implosion that idled 12,000 jobs. Milken, under house arrest in his $6 million mansion, lawyered up with top firms, but cooperating witnesses. Boesky's 3.5-year sentence, Siegel's tears on the stand, tightened the noose. By indictment day, June 1989, the portrait was damning. Not lone wolf, but syndicate head, puppeteering a fraud that distorted markets from New York to Tokyo. The reckoning peaked in Manhattan federal court from September 1990, a spectacle pitting Milken's cerebral defense against prosecutorial fury. Facing 98 counts, securities fraud, insider trading, racketeering, the 44-year-old, pale and professorial, pleaded not guilty, decrying a witch hunt on innovation. Giuliani's team, with 300 witnesses, dissected the machine. Boesky's ledger showing $108 million in Milken payoffs. Tape-recorded pleas from clients like Herb Weigel begging for parks. Shocks reverberated. Milken's own notes tallying $2 million bribes for MCI bonds. The human toll, from swindle bondholders to Drexel clerks, ruined overnight. Defense humanized him. Milken as visionary hounded by envious regulators. His cancer research a counterweight. But after 10 months, the jury convicted on 6 felonies in April 1991. Mail fraud, aiding falsehoods, acquitting on 92, but signaling the rot's reach. Sentencing in November drew celebrities and victims. Judge Alfred Sweet imposed 10 years, later cut to 2 for health. $500 million fine, $200 million disgorgement, barring him from finance forever. You were a financial disaster, Sweet ruled. Drexel dissolved. Co-conspirators like Lowell Milken, his brother, got 2 months. Milken served 22 months at Pleasanton Camp, emerging gaunt but resolute. Milken's junk heap became redemption's forge. Post-prison, he pivoted to philanthropy, amassing $1 billion in donations for education and medical breakthroughs, earning a prostate cancer pardon from Trump in 2020 amid controversy. Yet the shadow endures. Junk bonds tamed by reforms, takeovers sobered, markets scarred by $700 million in losses. His odyssey unearths ambition's double helix. How genius, untethered, twists innovation into infestation, and how even fallen angels can ascend, if only to remind us that yield without yield for all is just another form of theft. He peddled risk as revolution. until the market called in the principal, with interest compounded by cuffs. Case 6. Dennis Kozlowski, the Tyco Throne. Amid the marble halls of a 30 million Manhattan triplex, where champagne fountains flowed for a single birthday bash, a corporate chieftain crowned himself with gold-plated excess, until a 6,000 shower curtain bill leaked into headlines, toppling a 50 billion conglomerate and revealing a theft that gilded his fall. How did the everyman CEO, who preached frugality, drown in a sea of self-indulgence that prosecutors called the theft of the century? Dennis Kozlowski was born in 1946 in Newark, New Jersey, the son of a Newark police detective and a homemaker in a tight-knit, blue-collar Italian-American clan. His father, Leo, patrolled the streets with quiet authority, while his mother, Irene, stretched every dollar across 6 children. Young Dennis, stocky and street-smart, navigated parochial schools and rough playgrounds, dreaming of stability beyond the factory whistles. He attended Seton Hall University on a partial scholarship, majoring in accounting, but dropped out after 2 years to work full-time, embodying the grit of his roots. In 1971, at 25, Kozlowski joined Tyco Laboratories, a fledgling New Hampshire conglomerate dabbling in plastics and electronics, as an auditor. He was the archetype of upward mobility, crew-cut, button-down shirts, relentless work ethic that masked a gambler's risk appetite. Marriage to his first wife, Phyllis, produced 2 sons, but divorce in the 1980s led to a second union with Karen Lee, a Tyco exec, in a life of suburban normalcy, soccer games, backyard barbecues, a modest ranch in New Hampshire. The 1980s thrust him into the executive suite. Under CEO John Ford, Kozlowski orchestrated Tyco's transformation from a 600 million sleepy manufacturer into a 25 billion serial acquirer, snapping up fire sprinklers, medical tubing, and security alarms in a frenzy of leverage buyouts. By 1992, at 46, he ascended to CEO, relocating to Boca Raton, then Manhattan, where Tyco's stock quintupled to 60 a share. Kozlowski's persona was magnetic, the cause of legend, a chain-smoking, profane motivator who golfed with Jack Welch and preached continuous improvement in town halls. He donated millions to the arts, 20 million to the New Hampshire governor's mansion, and positioned Tyco as a job engine for 250,000 worldwide. Personal wealth crested at 1 billion. He collected Hudson River School paintings, hosted fundraisers for Rudy Giuliani. Yet he cultivated the everyman image, flying coach until board pushback, living in a 2 million Pied Terra, claiming his success was for the little guy. To Wall Street and Main Street, Kozlowski was the anti-wolf, the self-made savior who turned Rust Belt relics into global guardians, his gravelly voice and rolled-up sleeves signaling authenticity in an era of Enron excess. The descent ignited in the mid-1990s as Tyco's acquisition binge. Over 100 deals, swelled debt to 24 billion, demanding ever higher earnings to appease analysts. Kozlowski, under pressure to sustain 20 growth, cracked the vault of corporate funds. The pivot came in 1995 with the relocation program. Sham bonuses disguised as moving expenses, funneling 100 million to executives, including 81 million to himself for a non-existent move from New Hampshire. It escalated to outright plunder, 400 million in unauthorized loans and perks, from 2 million for his wife's 40th birthday on Sardinia, complete with a David Copperfield illusionist and 2,000 vodka bottles iced in gold, to a 6,000 shower curtain for his triplex. The fraud crystallized in 2001 when Kozlowski cashed out 150 million in stock options amid insider sales, while signing off on accounting gimmicks, inflating revenues by booking vendor rebates prematurely, hiding debt in off-balance sheet entities. CFO Mark Schwartz, his loyal shadow, executed the slight, 500 million in special purpose payouts masked as compensation. Kozlowski rationalized it as incentives for loyalty, a perk of the throne, but it was theft veiled in board approvals rubber-stamped by sycophants. As the dot-com bust loomed, the throne room reeked of desperation, the excess a frantic bid to outrun the ledger's truth. Whispers turned to warnings in 2001, when analyst David Fitzpatrick of Thomson First Call questioned Tyco's ballooning receivables. But the dam broke in June 2002, days after Enron's echo, when Kozlowski fled to Nantucket amid a board revolt over his $140 million payout. The Manhattan DA's office, under Robert Morgenthau, pounced on leaked memos from disgruntled execs, subpoenaing records from Tyco's Exeter HQ. Investigators unearthed the extravagance. Invoices for a $15,000 umbrella stand, $30,000 in dog leashes, all billed to Tyco via shell vendors. The raid on Kozlowski's Fifth Avenue triplex yielded ledgers tracing $100 million in forgiveness loans, personal debts erased by the company. Schwartz flipped early, detailing the key officer loan program as a slush fund. The pursuit spanned borders. SEC probes into European acquisitions revealing $200 million in hidden kickbacks. FBI agents grilling vendors on the Sardinia party, where guests dined on lobster flown from Maine. Tension spiked with Kozlowski's arrest on September 12, 2002, in his Montauk Beach house, handcuffed in boxers as cameras flashed. Clues piled like indictments. Board minutes omitting disclosures. Emails from Kozlowski greenlighting whatever it takes. By fall, as Tyco's stock cratered 10,000 jobs vaporized. The web ensnared 15 executives, exposing a culture where loyalty trumped law. The trial erupted in October 2003 in New York State Court, a tabloid frenzy dubbed the Tyco takedown. Indicted on 30 counts of grand larceny, conspiracy, and falsifying records, the 57-year-old Kozlowski, tanned and defiant in Brioni suits, pleaded not guilty, decrying a personal vendetta. DA Paul Dugan paraded the absurd. Schwartz's testimony of $36 million in non-compete payments to Kozlowski for staying put, victim statements from pension funds losing $2 billion. Revelations horrified. A $1 million payment to a disloyal director's wife as hush money. The triplex $20 million renovation, with walls of onyx and a lap pool. Courtroom gasps followed videos of the birthday bash, guests toasting amid fireworks, oblivious to the source. Defense assailed the board's complicity. Everyone knew, but the jury, after 4 months and 40 witnesses, deadlocked on minor counts, convicting on 22 felonies in June 2005, including $400 million in larceny. A retrial in 2006 sealed it. Guilty on all, with Kozlowski's taped jail calls mocking victims. Sentencing in September drew jeers. Judge Michael Obis imposed 8 1/3 to 25 years, $170 million restitution, calling it extraordinary corruption. Schwartz got 8 years. Tyco paid $3 billion in settlements, rebranding as Covidian. Kozlowski's throne dissolved into infamy's cell block. Paroled in 2015 after 6 years at Sing Sing, where he shoveled snow and counseled inmates, he retreated to Nantucket, his fortune clawed to $20 million, penning a memoir on lessons learned. Tyco's fracture birthed governance reforms, stricter clawbacks, independent audits. Yet the wounds fester. Shareholders' $100 billion evaporation, employees' shattered retirements. His saga dissects the intoxication of assent, how the everyman's armor cracks under avarice's weight, transforming stewardship into plunder and etching a truth that power's perks, unchecked, corrode the very foundations they were meant to fortify. He ruled Tyco with an iron fist wrapped in velvet, until the curtain fell, revealing a kingdom looted from within. Case 7. Jeffrey Skilling, the Enron Enigma. In the gleaming towers of Houston's energy skyline, where natural gas futures danced like fireflies on screens, a brilliant economist conjured illusions of endless growth, turning a sleepy pipeline company into a $60 billion colossus. But when the flames died in 2001, a labyrinth of off-books entities and shredded documents revealed not innovation, but the greatest accounting sorcery in corporate history. $74 billion in vaporized value that left executives in silk ties facing the noose of justice. How did the whiz kid who redefined risk become its ultimate victim? Jeffrey Keith Skilling was born in 1953 in Pittsburgh, The eldest of four in a middle-class family uprooted by his father's job as a sales manager for Illinois Bell. The Skillings moved to the suburbs of Chicago, then Houston, chasing stability in the oil patch. Young Jeff, wiry and intense with a mop of brown hair and a perpetual squint, buried himself in books and chess, skipping grades to graduate high school at 17. At Southern Methodist University, he majored in economics, then Harvard Business School, where his razor-sharp mind earned an MBA in 1979. Professors called him a prodigy. Peers envied his cold logic. Skilling married Susan Long, a fellow MBA, and they built a life of quiet ascent. 3 children, weekend hikes in the Rockies, a modest split level in Houston's woodlands. His early career at McKinsey Company was meteoric, a consultant dismantling utilities for efficiency, his reports dissecting monopolies like cadavers. By 1985, at 32, he caught the eye of Enron founder Ken Lay, who tapped him to run a new trading arm. The 1990s etched Skilling into legend. Enron, once a dull natural gas pipeline, morphed under his gaze into an asset-light powerhouse, trading energy contracts like stocks. He invented mark-to-market accounting, booking projected future profits up front, and special-purpose entities, SPEs, to hedge risks off the books. Revenues exploded from $13 billion to $101 billion. Stock rocketed from 20 to 90. Skilling, now CFO, in 1991 and president by 1997, was the visionary. Lanky, balding, with a nasal twang and a penchant for bow ties, he preached rank and yank performance reviews, firing the bottom 15 annually. Lay dubbed him successor. Fortune named Enron America's most innovative company 6 years running. Skilling's net worth hit $80 million. He hosted salons with tech moguls, donated to Harvard, and lived in a 2 million River Oaks manse, projecting the image of a meritocratic maestro. Brains over birthright, reshaping energy for the digital age. To investors and employees, he was the enigma solver, the man who turned pipelines into profit engines, his intensity a badge of genius in a complacent industry. The unraveling threaded back to 1997, when broadband ventures flopped and California deregulation sparked energy crises. Skilling, desperate to mask $1 billion in losses, layered complexity. SPEs like Chuco and LJM, controlled by CFO Andrew Fastow, sold failing assets to Enron for inflated prices, hiding debt in shadows. The moral breach deepened in 2000 as Skilling assumed CEO, greenlighting $2.1 billion in bogus profits from swaps with banks like JP Morgan, disguised as prepaid deals. Fastow pocketed $45 million in fees. Skilling signed off, rationalizing it as aggressive but legal, a firewall against short sellers sniffing weakness. As stock wobbled, he dumped $60 million in shares, while preaching Enron's the next G. The crime wasn't a heist, but a house of mirrors. $13 billion in hidden liabilities, audited by Arthur Andersen with winks and nods. The boundary fractured in boardrooms, where ambitions fog-blurred ethics into expediency. The enigma twisting from puzzle to prison. Cracks spider-weeped in 2001, when Fortune's Bethany McLean queried Enron's opacity in Is Enron Overpriced? Skilling snapped in a call, hanging up on her, his first public tremor. Internal alarms blared. Whistleblower Sharon Watkins warned Lay of accounting hooey in August memos. But the pursuit crystallized October 16th, when Enron disclosed a $618 million loss and $1.2 billion debt reduction via SPEs, stock plunging 20. The SEC subpoenaed records on October 22nd, agents descending on Houston's 1600 Smith Street HQ. Clues erupted. Fastow's resignation, emails detailing raptors, SPEs that absorb losses like black holes. FBI raids seized shredders overflowing with confetti. 10,000 documents pulped by Anderson's staff. The chase intensified as banks coughed up mahogany, code for fake Nigerian barge deals worth $30 million in fees. Overseas, European arms froze. Whistleblowers like Watkins testified to Congress, detailing Skilling's hypothetical queries on SPE viability. Tension coiled with each revelation. $5 billion more in restated earnings, sparking credit downgrades for billion in margin calls. By November, as employees watched 401(k)s evaporate, the web-snared Lay, who sold $90 million in stock, his folksy denials ringing hollow. The trial stormed in January 2006 in Houston federal court, a civic exorcism 9 blocks from Enron's ghost tower. Indicted on 35 counts, fraud, conspiracy, insider trading, the 52-year-old Skilling, gaunt in dark suits, pleaded not guilty, claiming I didn't know the details. U.S. Attorney Kenneth Layton, no relation, unleashed 50 witnesses. Fasto's plea bargain tears on 30 million bribes. Watkins' steely account of ignored warnings. Revelation scorched. Skilling's cash cow emails on LJM. 100 million in executive loans forgiven amid the lies. Courtroom lightning struck with victim monologues. A 20-year Enron vet losing $2 million, sobbing, "We believed in you." Defense humanized the accused, Skilling as innovator scapegoated by complexity, but tapes of his profane tirades, Enron's fucked, and stock dumps betrayed detachment. After 4 months, the jury convicted Skilling on 19 counts in May, Lay on 6 in a bench trial. Sentencing in October drew 200 spectators. Judge Simeon Lake imposed 24 years for Skilling, 45 for Lay, who died pre-incarceration. "You were the architects," Lake intoned. Forfeiture topped $80 million. Anderson collapsed in scandal. Its $52 million fine apire. Enron's enigma lingers as a scar on capitalism. Skilling, paroled in 2019 after 12 years at Englewood Camp, where he taught MBAs via proxy, resides in Houston. Fortune gutted to $500,000, appeals quashed by the Supreme Court. Reforms like Sarbanes-Oxley armored ledgers. Victims recouped $21 billion via settlements. Yet the void, 20,000 jobs lost, retirements raised, defies balance. Skilling's spiral unveils the peril of intellect unmoored. How enigmas, unsolved, devour their solvers, and how the brightest flames cast the darkest frauds, illuminating that true innovation bows to transparency's unyielding light. He engineered energy's future until the grid failed, trapping him in the blackout of his own design. Case 8. Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto prodigy. In the humid sprawl of the Bahamas, where luxury condos tower over crypto ATMs on every corner, a tousled 30-year-old in cargo shorts and a t-shirt preached effective altruism, using billions to save the world, one trade at a time. But when FTX imploded in November 2022, $8 billion in customer funds had vanished into a black hole of bets and bunkers, exposing not a savior, but a prodigy whose algorithms hid the plunder of his own creation. How did Silicon Valley's vegan wunderkind, worth $26 billion overnight, wake up in leg irons? Samuel Benjamin Bankman-Fried was born in 1992 in Stanford, California, to 2 Yale law professors. His father, Joe, a tax expert, his mother, Barbara, a democracy advocate, in a household buzzing with intellectual debates over vegan dinners. Young Sam, gangly and awkward with a shock of curly hair and a habit of mumbling through sentences, skipped traditional schools for Montessori, devouring math puzzles and video games like Pokemon. At MIT, in 2010, he majored in physics, but drifted to economics, interning at a trading firm where he spotted arbitrage edges in Tokyo yen. Graduating in 2014, he joined Jane Street Capital, pocketing $10 million in his first year through high-frequency trades. Bankman-Fried was the archetype of the quirky genius, t-shirt uniform, vegan to his core, living in a cluttered San Francisco apartment with roommates who doubled as effective altruism, yay, converts. He dated reporter Kristen McNaughton, later Caroline Ellison of Alameda Research, blending romance with risk models. In 2017, disillusioned with Wall Street's waste, he founded Alameda Research in Berkeley, a quantitative trading shop mining crypto inefficiencies, starting with $16 million of his own savings. The 2020s crowned him a demigod. Amid the pandemic boom, Bankman-Fried launched FTX in 2019 from the Bahamas tax-free allure, a user-friendly exchange promising low fees and celebrity endorsements. By 2021, FTX sponsored Super Bowls, Miami Heat arenas, Tom Brady ads, $135 million in splashy bets that masked the mechanics. Alameda's backdoor. Unlimited borrowing from FTX's coffers, seated with $13 billion in customer deposits. He pledged 99% of his wealth to EA causes via the Future Fund, hobnobbing with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair at Davos, his net worth ballooning to $26 billion by Fortune's 2022 list. Bankman-Fried's persona was irresistible. The anti-billionaire, sleeping on bean bags in Nassau's $35 million penthouse, surrounded by 50 staffers in a chaotic open office. He donated $40 million to 2022 midterms, mostly to Democrats, positioning as crypto's ethical anchor. Regulate me, he urged Congress, while FTX hit 1 million users. To the world, he was the prodigy philanthropist, the guy who traded Solana at 0.50 and turned it into a $50 billion empire, proving altruism and alpha could coexist in code. The ethical fault line quaked in 2021 as Alameda's bets soured on a Bitcoin crash, losing $8 billion. Rather than fold, Bankman-Fried tapped FTX's user funds, collateral for loans via FTT, a token he invented, propped by circular trades. The fracture deepened with the 2022 Terra Luna collapse, wiping $40 billion. Alameda borrowed $10 billion more, undocumented, from FTX's segregated wallets. Ellison, as CEO, executed the siphon, $4 billion to venture bets like Anthropic AI, $500 million to political PACs, even $100 million for a Bahamas mansion. Bankman-Fried, from his treadmill desk, approved via Slack, framing it as insurance funds for liquidity, a temporary bridge in crypto's Wild West. But it was plunder, backdoors in FTX's code allowing Alameda infinite withdrawals, while retail users' balances blinked green on fake ledgers. As inflation bit and rates rose, redemptions surged. He masked outflows with venture capital infusions, like Sequoia's $900 million round. The prodigy unraveled not in malice, but myopia, EA's greater good justifying the ends of ends until the code's hidden lines looped into a noose. The alert tripped on November 2nd, 2022, when a CoinDesk report exposed Alameda's FTT holdings, 90% of its balance sheet, as incestuous with FTX. Twitter erupted. Rival Binance CZ vowed to dump $500 million in FTT, crashing the token 90%. Bankman-Fried live-tweeted denials from his yacht, but panic withdrawals hit $6 billion in 72 hours. The Bahamas securities regulator froze assets on November 10th. U.S. prosecutors, tipped by whistleblower and ex-girlfriend Ellison's flip, subpoenaed servers from FTX's Nassau data center. FBI agents in tactical gear raided the penthouse at dawn on November 12th, seizing laptops amid half-eaten pizzas and whiteboards scrawled with risk equations. Clues cascaded. Blockchain traces showing $2 billion rerouted to Bahamian banks. Slack channels like Water, code from Money Moves, detailing $8.9 billion in commingled funds. The pursuit vaulted borders. DOJ teams in Hong Kong grilling Alameda traders. IRS audits of the Effective Accelerationism Fund. Tension peaked with run-on-the-bank simulations. $1.7 billion deficit unearthed, propped by $400 million from Solana co-founder wallets. By Thanksgiving, as users queued for wire reversals, the web ensnared Ellison and execs Nishad Singh, Gary Wong, all cooperating, their guilty pleas painting Bankman-Fried as the de facto architect. The trial commenced October 3rd, 2023, in Manhattan Federal Court, a crypto confessional under Judge Lewis Kaplan. Indicted on 7 counts: wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering. The 31-year-old, shackled and shorn, pleaded not guilty, blaming bad decisions in a perfect storm. SDNY's Damian Williams paraded 8 witnesses. Ellison's wrenching testimony of coerced intimacy and $14 billion whole. Singh's code breakdowns revealing the backdoor. Revelations gutted. $100 million to Ukraine aid laundered through Alameda. Celebrity payments to Brady. Curry totaling $50 million from user pots. Courtroom tremors hit with chat logs. Bankman-Fried's fuck users money quip in a private thread, juxtaposed against his altruism TED Talks. Defense leaned on youth and chaos. Effective venturer gone awry. But the jury, after 4 weeks, convicted on all counts November 2nd, 2023, deliberating under 3 hours. Sentencing March 28, 2024, packed the gallery with victims. Kaplan IC levied 25 years, $11 billion forfeiture, dubbing it one of the biggest financial frauds in history. Hubris and gluttony, he said. Ellison got 2 years. Wong, Singh probation. FTX's carcass yielded $16 billion for creditors, a partial bomb. Bankman-Fried's prodigy mantle morphed into pariah's chains. Incarcerated at Brooklyn's MDC, where he tutors inmates in calculus, appeals grinding through 2025, his $26 billion evaporated, family fundraisers netting 250,000 bail scraps. Crypto winters deepened. FTX's fall spiked SEC suits, birthing clearer regs like the Fit 21 Act. Victims, from Bahamian retirees to U.S. traders, recouped $118 via bankruptcy, but trust fracture lingers. Suicide attempts among users. EA's halo tarnished. His enigma probes the vertigo of velocity. How prodigies, propelled by code and conviction, can code their own cataclysm, revealing that in the rush to redeem the world, the first casualty is often the mirror's unflinching gaze. He coded salvation for strangers, until the algorithm looped back, executing the architect in lines of his own making. Case 9. Elizabeth Holmes, The Blood Promise. She stepped onto the TED stage in a black turtleneck, her voice steady as she unveiled a drop of blood that could diagnose a dozen diseases in minutes. A revolution whispered from Stanford's dorms to Silicon Valley's boardrooms. Theranos promised to pierce the veil of illness with painless precision, but when the Lancets ran dry in 2015, the $9 billion mirage dissolved into falsified tests and fooled investors, leaving patients with promises as empty as the vials. What drove the dropout darling, hailed as the next Steve Jobs, to stake her soul on a lie that cut deeper than any needle? Elizabeth Holmes was born in 1984 in Washington, D.C., to a government committee staffer father and a congressional aide mother, in a family orbiting power's periphery. Christian Holmes foretraced his lineage to a Civil War hero, but the clan's wealth had faded. Elizabeth grew up in a modest Houston suburb after her father's Enron stint relocated them. Precocious and poised, with wide blue eyes and a cascade of blonde hair, she devoured Mandarin at 9, dreaming of global cures inspired by her great-uncle's aviation tales. At St. John's, an elite D.C. prep, she edited the paper, then jetted to Stanford for chemical engineering, arriving in 2002 as a prodigy among prodigies. But dorm room epiphany struck, a fear of needles, a backpack full of blood vials from a sick uncle. At 19, she dropped out, founding Real-Time Cures in 2003 with $3,000 in savings, rebranding as Theranos, a portmanteau of therapy and diagnosis. Holmes was the vision incarnate, tall, blonde, echoing Jobs in her uniform of black tops and no makeup, her baritone voice a deliberate contralto of command. She married Billy Evans, a hotel scion, in 2019, bearing 2 children amid the storm, but early years were solitary, coding prototypes in a Palo Alto apartment, fueled by green juices and all-nighters. The ascent was meteoric. By 2004, Holmes secured $6 million from venture capitalist Tim Draper, her pitch deck a manifesto, a portable Edison device revolutionizing labs with finger-prick tests at pennies. Theranos ballooned to 700 employees in a secretive Newark warehouse. Partnerships with Walgreens rolled out wellness centers by 2013, promising HIV and cancer screens from a droplet. Investors poured $700 million. Rupert Murdoch $125 million. The Walton family $150 million, valuing her at $4.5 billion, making Holmes the youngest self-made female billionaire at 30. Forbes crowned her. She graced Times covers, lecturing at Davros on women's leadership. Philanthropy burnished the halo, board seats at the American Red Cross, donations to Girls STEM. Her persona mesmerized. The steely founder who slept in factories, fired dissenters with a glance, her office a shrine to Edison and Da Vinci. To Silicon Valley and beyond, Holmes was the blood promise personified, the dropout disrupting a $73 billion industry, her Theranos a beacon where tech met humanity, turning crimson drops into diagnostic gold. The fracture seeped in by 2010 as prototypes faltered. The Edison couldn't parse diluted samples, yielding 30 error rates. Rather than pivot, Holmes doubled down on deception, mandating NDAs and staging demos with preloaded blood from commercial labs. The moral rift widened in 2013 when COO Sunny Balwani, her secret paramour, bullied engineers into silence. Holmes touted FDA approvals that never came, claiming military contracts to cloak the void. The crime coalesced in falsified validations. Theranos ran patient samples on rigged Siemens machines, diluting venous blood to mimic finger pricks, reporting 240 tests from a device handling 15. Investors blinded by hype, $450 million from Partners Fund, funneled into a $9 billion facade. Holmes rationalized it as moonshot necessity, echoing Jobs' reality distortion field, but it poisoned lives. A cancer misdiagnosis, syphilis false positives endangering pregnancies. The boundary didn't snap. It scarred gradually, in hushed lab meetings where ambition's thirst outbled truth, the promise curdling into peril. Doubts drew first blood in 2014, when Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou fielded a lab director's tip on accuracy woes. Holmes dismissed early queries with charm offensives. Lunches with Murdoch, pleased to the journal's publisher. But Carreyrou's doggedness unearthed the core. Whistleblower Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, leaked memos on rigged demos. The SEC subpoenaed records in 2015. FDA inspectors, posing as patients, tested the Edison, finding it for show only. Raids on the Newark facility seized prototypes, plastic casings with no innards. While Carreyrou's October 2015 expose, hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology, detonated the myth, stock equivalents crashing 70. The pursuit intensified. DOJ probes traced $700 million in misrepresentations. Ex-employees like Erica Chung detailed coercion in affidavits. Tension mounted with Walgreens' lawsuit for $140 million in setup costs. Autopsies revealing faulty results in overdose cases. By 2016, as Holmes stepped down as CEO, the web tightened. Balwani's emails scorched. We will kill any leaks. International regulators froze partnerships. The clues, once whispers, screamed in spreadsheets. 0 peer-reviewed papers. $5 million in legal fees to muzzle critics. The trial pierced in March 2021 in San Jose federal court, a reckoning amid pandemic masks. Indicted on 11 counts, wire fraud, conspiracy. Holmes, 37 and ponytailed, pleaded not guilty. Her defense a tale of overzealous innovation. Prosecutors, led by John Bostic, paraded 29 witnesses. Carreyrou's forensic timeline. Patient Safia Amarag's anguish over a false miscarriage scare. Revelations lacerated. Holmes' text to Balwani plotting war on leakers. Board minutes fabricating Pfizer partnerships. Courtroom veins pulsed with shocks. A Safeway exec's testimony on demo fraud, where Holmes' team swapped devices mid-pitch. Investor Alan Eisenman's $700,000 loss, his Parkinson's undiagnosed elsewhere. Defense invoked the patent myth. Holmes hoodwinked by Theranos scientists. But the jury convicted on 4 fraud counts January 3, 2022, acquitting on patient endangerment. Sentencing November 18 drew 50 victims. Judge Edward Davila imposed 11 years and 3 months for $152 million restitution, $804,000 fine, calling it a massive fraud born of greed and hubris. Balwani got nearly 13 years in a parallel trial. Theranos dissolved, assets liquidated for pennies. Holmes' promise ebbed into exile's quiet. Released to home confinement in 2022, she appeals from a $9 million Atherton estate, her billions of bankruptcies ash, now a mother navigating supervised release. Walgreens settled for $30 million. Victims recouped fractions, but the deeper wound festers. Trust eroded in women's leadership. Biotech chilled by the hype hangover. Her arc lays bare the peril of pedestals. How a drop of ambition, undiluted by doubt, can flood an industry with false hope, reminding us that the sharpest innovations heal only when honesty draws first blood. She vowed to rewrite medicine's script until the ink ran dry, staining her legacy with the red of regret. Case 10. Martin Shkreli, the pharma villain. He smirked into the camera after jacking a life-saving drug's price 5,000% overnight, turning a 13.50 pill into a 750 luxury for the desperate, and declared himself the most hated man in America. But when federal agents raided his Brooklyn lair in 2015, seizing hard drives etched with insider trades and copied secrets, the villain's bravado cracked, revealing a $65 million fraud that traded not just pills, but the public's trust for personal profit. How did a self-taught pharma whiz, once a Wall Street prodigy, prescribe his own dose of infamy? Martin Shkreli was born in 1983 in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, to Albanian immigrants. His father a janitor turned doorman, his mother a nurse's aide, in a cramped walk-up where dreams clashed with reality's grind. Young Martin, scrawny and bespectacled with a mop of dark hair and a nasally whine, escaped into video games and finance forums, hacking together a hedge fund in high school from his bedroom PC. At Baruch College, he majored in business, but skipped classes for trading pits, launching MSMB Capital at 21 in 2006 with 5,000 scraped from odd jobs. Shkreli was the outsider's archetype. Awkward charm, rapid-fire rants on biotech blogs, a voracious reader of SEC filings. He married Christy Smyrniotis, a pharma exec, in 2013, but their union frayed amid his ascent, producing no children but endless headlines. Early days were scrappy. Offices in his mom's basement, cold-calling investors with pitches on generic drug shorts. The 2010s villainized him into legend. Shkreli founded Retrofin in 2011, a rare disease outfit, taking it public in 2014 for $700 million in stock value, his shares netting $30 million. But the real infamy brewed at Turing Pharmaceuticals, acquired in 2015 for $55 million, where he targeted Daraprim, a 62-year-old antiparasitic for AIDS and cancer patients. On the day of purchase, September 17th, he hiked the price from $13.50 to $750 per pill, a 5,000 leap, citing RD costs while pocketing $65 million in sales. Shkreli's persona exploded. The Troll King, live-streaming rants from his $3.5 million Dumbo loft, buying Wu-Tang Clan's $2 million one-of-a-kind album, feuding with journalists on Twitter as Marty Shkreli. Forbes pegged his worth at $70 million. He donated to Democrats, posed as a Robin Hood for generics, but his shtick, crying fake tears in interviews, boasting, "I'm a capitalist," drew boycotts and death threats. To pharma's underbelly and social media mobs, he was the villain unmasked. The kid from the projects weaponizing markets against the vulnerable, his Retrofin a $1.5 billion empire built on bravado and borrowed billions. The venom surged in 2012 as MSMB hemorrhaged $3 million on bad biotech bets. Shkreli cornered, blurred Retrofin's lines, using it as a bailout, selling $3.4 million in stock to MSMB investors without disclosure, then wiring funds back as consulting fees. The fracture peaked in 2014, when Retrofin sued him for $65 million in ill-gotten gains, exposing a scheme. Insider trades on Orexogen Therapeutics tips from a mole, $1.8 million laundered through shells. Shkreli justified it as genius hedging, but it was theft, copying proprietary data from Lehman Brothers bankruptcy files, bribing for leaks. As Daraprim's backlash boiled, he founded Vira, ex-Turing, in 2017, colluding with distributors to lock generics out, hiking prices further. The moral dam burst not in quiet, but spectacle. Congressional hearings where he stonewalled, his smirk etching the fracture. Ambition's elixir turned toxic, prescribing profit over patience. The villain's script written in escalating doses of denial. The probe slithered in since 2014, when Retrofin's board ousted Shkreli amid SEC tips on self-dealing. But the raid struck December 17, 2015, FBI SWAT breaching his loft at dawn, zip-tying the pajama-clad 32-year-old as cameras rolled. Agents hauled servers, laptops, and that Wu-Tang album, collateral in the $5 million bail. Clues unfurled. Emails from Retrofin execs detailing settlements as kickbacks, blockchain traces of $7.4 million in Oryx-Igen profits from non-public merger news. The net widened. Subpoenas to Vira uncovering non-compete deals stifling competition. Whistleblowers like Retrofin's Greg Lemka flipping on the Shkreli slush. Tension throbbed with each leak. A 2016 indictment on 8 counts, securities fraud and conspiracy. Prosecutors painting him as a con man preying on the sick. Across the river, FTC suits alleged anti-competitive pacts, fining Vira $500,000. By arrests echo, as Daraprim patients ration doses, the pursuit ensnared 10 co-defendants, Shkreli's taunts. Jail me, I dare you, fueling the fire. The trial clashed in Brooklyn federal court from June 2017, a circus of hubris under Judge Kiyo Matsumoto. Indicted on 14 counts total, adding wire fraud for Vira. Shkreli, slick in suits, pleaded not guilty. His defense a circus of delays. Fake juror threats, psychiatric evals. U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue unleashed 20 witnesses. Ex-partner Evan Griebel's tearful guilty plea on the Retrofin bailout. Patient testimonies of Daraprim's toll. One mom describing her toxoplasmosis child seizures. Revelations seared. Shkreli's texts plotting to crush rivals. 1.3 million in copied Lehman files traded for tips. Courtroom farce peaked with his outbursts. Objection. Bullshit. Earning contempt. The jury, unmoved, convicted on 8 securities counts August 1st, acquitting on 5, deadlocking on 1. Sentencing March 9, 2018, overflowed with victims. Matsumoto levied 7 years, $75,000 fine, $7.4 million forfeiture, banning him from pharma for life. A fraudster, not a visionary, she decreed, ordering the Wu-Tang album sale, $4.75 million to a French collector. Griebel got a year. Vira dissolved in $40 million antitrust settlements. Shkreli's villainy mellowed into footnotes. Released May 18, 2022, to a halfway house after 4 years at Allenwood Low Security, where he DJ'd sets and studied for a master's. He emerged September 14, 2022, to a $2 million Manhattan pad. Fortune forfeited to $4 million. His Twitter ban lifted, but pharma exile upheld by a January 2024 ruling. He pivots to streaming Shkreli's castle, hawking NFTs and rants, but echoes persist. Daraprim generics, now 1/pill via rivals, yet his hikes inspired copycats. Victims recouped $65 million via funds, but the chill, congressional price caps like the Inflation Reduction Act, stems from his spark. Shkreli's pharma folly unmasks the alchemy of audacity. How a villain's vial, shaken by unchecked ego, can poison the well of mercy, etching that the costliest cures are those peddled without a conscience's prescription. He hiked prices to heal his ego, until the bill came due, payable in the currency of cuffs and contempt. What's your take on these stories? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, because the next mystery is already ticking.